Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission is the lead author of a new book that we have coming out. This book is called Stop the Silence: Thriving After Child Sexual Abuse. Welcome, Dr. Pamela J Pine. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. As always, thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, which is amazing.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and on the heels of having some of the other author interviews and just the courage that these men and women have had. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about that in a minute or two. But you guys, Dr. Pamela J Pine is an accomplished international health, development, and communication specialist, concentrating on enhancing the lives of the poor and otherwise underserved groups. She is the original founder and now director of Stop the Silence, a department of the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. And Pam is also an artist, which I've seen some of your beautiful art. So I love that. And I love that you put that in your bio too.
Thank you.
You have devoted your whole life to helping stop the silence about child sexual abuse. Tell me about that journey. How did you get here?
Yeah, it's been a long one. I was working before I started working on the issue of child sexual abuse and other adverse childhood experiences. I was working around the world, which is a story in and of itself, but literally around the world on all kinds of issues in health and development and communication. Some of the really most difficult problems in health and development that the world is experiencing today and at that time. I started decades ago doing that. And one day I was sitting at my desk in the development organization where I was working in Washington, D.C. at the time. And along came a notice from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Very, very early call. This was the year 2000. Very, very early call for proposals focused on research in interpersonal violence. And there were a few areas: domestic violence, elder abuse, bullying, and child abuse. And I stopped at the child abuse piece because my sister, Amy Pine, was working in California then and before, and had gotten a name for herself in the area of working with survivors of child sexual abuse. I really didn't know anything about child sexual abuse. Amazingly enough, I got through all of my studies without anybody ever mentioning it, which is incredible. I mean, I have a PhD in public health communication and a master's of public health, and nobody ever talked about it, despite the fact there's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys in the United States alone, and more than 42 million adult survivors in the United States who have experienced this. So I started reading. And as soon as I started reading, frankly, I couldn't stop reading because it was so outside of my comprehension about how we were not doing very much about this issue affecting every single generation and the generations to come in fundamental and really drastic ways. So this was before the issue of the Catholic Church scandal hit. Very few people wanted to talk to me. The issue of child sexual abuse was truly silent. People would lower their voices when I started talking to them. I used to kid around that I could clear a cocktail party in 5 minutes. So I figured something more needed to be done, and I figured I might as well try to do it. I had a wonderful CEO in that organization who did nothing but encourage my insanity. And so I decided I could do something. He decided, go ahead and try it. And so I started doing research and communication research to find out what people in the DC, Virginia, and Maryland areas knew about this and how to create an actionable public, a public that would actually do something about this issue. That research turned into something called the Race to Stop the Silence. I partnered with the University of Maryland to do that research. And the Race to Stop the Silence ultimately was a huge event that started in 2004 and went for 10 years, every April during Child Abuse Prevention Month. And it garnered a mess of media. We had Channel 7 and 9. And we had CNN out one year, and we had our public service announcements on NPR as well, and other stations around the country. At one point, we had 37 states represented and 7 foreign nations, and the race at its height had 1,200 people running and walking through the streets of Washington, D.C. with Stop the Silence, Stop Child Sexual Abuse on their backs. And, the way I describe my involvement with this issue is that it took me. I didn't take it, because it was so profound and so of such importance that it was obvious that something really, really big needed to happen. And I knew how to do the media piece. And I knew if we could just start talking about it, maybe we could really get a national and international dialogue going. That's the short of it.
Well, it's short, but it's powerful. And I so appreciate your insanity for taking it on and for sticking with it, honestly. Do you think that there's another wave coming?
We are doing, Frank, I'm being very honest here. I won't take on that size of an event again. I mean, it literally took everything out of me. And in year 11, when I was getting emails, where's the Race to Stop the Silence? Where's the Race to Stop the Silence? My answer was either the race was going to kill me or I was going to kill it. And I voted on me. It was that big. And the details were literally endless from the day after the race stopped and I started again until the race stopped again. And that's the way it went for 10 years. We are now very heavily focused on trying literally to get the world, as I said, on the same page. So we've got a program that is focused on, it's an accredited online education program that provides a postgraduate certificate, and you get credits, US as well as UK, either points from the UK or credits for the US program, and those can be applied towards a master's degree in this issue. And the focus is child trauma and protection. I don't know of, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know of another program like it in the world. So this year is a testing of the entire program online for US participants, anybody who signs up. And by the way, if you want to sign up, anybody listening to this, you can write to me at Pamela P, so it's PAMELAP at ivatcenters.org. That's IVAT centers.org. So Pamela P at ivatcenters.org. And we will sign you up. The program will be live within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're hoping to kick it off on April 1st, which is the beginning of Child Abuse Awareness Month. Once we get any bugs that are in the program, out of the program, starting with this US audience, we will be opening up the program for participation from anybody, anywhere in the world. and we are adjusting our prices so that they are relevant to people in Africa, Asia, Latin America, China, well, Asia, the Pacific, wherever. Because as we know, what costs a US citizen a certain amount of money is going to be completely prohibitive for someplace, say, in parts of Africa. So we will adjust the prices so that it is affordable for people. And in that way, it's a very comprehensive program. It goes into the prevention. It goes into what child sexual abuse is. It goes into the grooming process of abusers. It goes into reporting. It goes into policy issues, communication, advocacy, and treatment of children. So it's very comprehensive, and people will come out with a very good understanding of not only the issue in and of itself, but how it affects us all, the individual children, the adolescents they become, the adults they become, their families, their communities, their societies, their nation, and the profound impact that it has on all of our economies, because it affects our schoolwork, it affects our ability to show up at work, the impact of depression and anxiety and personality disorders and PTSD. All of this affects every aspect of our society. So to answer your question, we are doing something big in a different way. And of course, this wonderful book that was on your impetus. Hey, Pam, let's write a book. Sure, let's do that. We're hoping also is going to reach out to populations around the United States and around the world. As you well know, we're looking together in partnership, looking to get this book translated into various languages so that everybody can hear the stories from survivors. I'm not, by the way. I mean, I don't always say that. I am or I'm not. If people ask, I answer. I just got gripped by this issue. But the vast majority of people, I think it's 20 out of the 23 people who are writing, are survivors. And their guidance at the end through a piece of their writing called The Practice helps other survivors move forward in their healing process. So I think this also can have a profound impact.
Yeah, well, I'll back up to the first big thing that you were talking about. Wow, and amazing, and that is incredible, and that will most likely have a much bigger impact than the race did for those 10 years. And so congratulations on moving that forward. And then the book, I believe we have 9 countries represented in our author cast.
Right.
And so that is amazing. And they're telling their stories from all of those backgrounds and cultures. And I'm so honored to be guiding and publishing this, you know, with those authors who said yes. And this kind of gets me back to something I said in the intro today that I wanted to ask you about. What I was noticing from talking to the authors, or what I was thinking was, wow, it's just so brave of them to step up and share. But honestly, what I think is our authors have stepped up, and they are at a certain point in their life where it doesn't take as much courage to share anymore. And the reason I say this, and I want to ask you about it, is because just to give other people hope. There's going to be a time where you can get to the other side of your own trauma and stand in your worthiness and be able to speak. And this is part of the mission. We want to stop the silence. We want to stop the stuffing of shame and the secrecy around everything. We're normalizing the conversation. So what do you want to say about your beautiful authors?
Well, one, something that you touched on, but is worth repeating, is the bravery, is the willingness to step forward and truthfully and coherently and transparently tell each of their individual stories. These are hard stories to tell, I would imagine. I mean, if I think of my deepest, darkest issues in my life, and then just coming out with a chapter in a book about those, I'd have to think 2 or 3 or 10 times, right? So to do that, I think is brave and is thankfully very giving of them, because I truly believe that each of these people who have written for this book, their primary motivation is to help other people. And they really want to see their life having an impact on other people, and what they bring and what they've learned to the process. When I talk to them as survivors and to other survivors, I know thousands after all, it's been 22 years. So I know thousands of survivors at this point, and there is a real strong motivation to make sure that this doesn't happen to any more kids. That's a big job. It's a huge job. I mean, it's still happening all the time, all the time. So they're trying to make sure it doesn't happen. And they're also trying to make sure that as people grow up and grow through it, that there is a way for those people to find healing and be productive in their own lives. So I think those things are just so important to point out. And I'm I'm not their parent, but I am very proud of them for doing this.
As I am of you. I think our mom comes out in so many different ways with this project. I'm so proud of everybody. I get that. I feel that. Being the mom of a survivor, I know that education, I didn't get it. And I'm really excited that you talked about the program that you're working on today, because I think that if that had been in any form in my upbringing, I could have had a different situation with my own awareness. And that's really what we're doing, isn't it? Is we're enhancing people's awareness of their usually inner circle environment. It was LaQuisha Hall was on yesterday, and I told them I didn't know the actual statistic, and she's like, it's 93% of cases where it's not a stranger. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, well, it's not only not a stranger, but I think it's something like, I may be a little off here, but it's something like 80% is familial. It may be that high, it may be a little lower than that, but I think it's 90 to 94% of people are not strangers, and then a certain percentage of that are family members. So it's a huge number of people. And what we're often taught as kids, and the thinking often, even still today, even though there's been so much in the papers, right, and on the news about child sexual abuse, I think that there's an ongoing perception that a lot of this happens from strangers. And in fact, fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, it's all of that. When you listen to Akare Marisala Thompson's story, Akare, or it goes by Ray, has a program called Trust My River, and they out in New Zealand, and they are our primary international partners. And we're currently, by the way, working on a grant with a Peruvian organization to bring our model along with Ray's program. Ray has a partner, Elia Chan. He should be mentioned because he's instrumental as well as other people. But they have a program. It's a downloadable app that allows people to get in touch with all kinds of service providers in real time and to have those service providers interact with each other. So we're writing a grant currently in collaboration with Trust My River to bring this program into Peru. And what we're trying to make sure happens is that all of these people around the world are coming together to be able to address this issue. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yes, I think also just staying with that theme of, it is most of the time in the family, in the inner circle, which I think is a shocker for a lot of people. And really the awareness to help our listeners understand where to look and how to be aware and how to think about this and how to recognize it.
Yeah, and that's where I was going. That's where I lost my strain. So Ray's story is about being a little boy whose family immigrates from Samoa to this new land of milk and honey, is the way he often puts it, of New Zealand. And he finds himself in a house with all kinds of people coming and going because they were early arrivals from Samoa. So all these Samoans are coming in and out of the house, and he gets molested by someone who's very well known to his family. And then he gets molested by other people who are also coming and going, some known to his family and some not known to his family. And his whole family is involved. His sisters, get molested. And Ray's story is quite the story, because what ends up happening is he finds out, and this is recent, that his father is also an offender. And how does the family then deal with all of that after Ray has taken such a stand to make sure that children are protected? So all of this, to go back to this, so many people who are doing the molestation, the offending, are not only known, but are family members or within the very close circle of the family, teachers, coaches, community members, neighbors. I mean, I have this in my own family. When I was a kid, one of my relatives was molested by her, not next door, but the house next door to her. And it has such a profound effect on people's self-esteem and their sense of safety and what they do ultimately for their work and living, that she wound up in not very good circumstances for a really long time. There is a profound impact physically, emotionally, neurologically. And so the protection that has to be has to start from the family and within the community. And all those concentric circles, we need to put protective measures in place on every level. Now, the schools, let me comment on that. The schools, we worked very hard to get into the schools for a while, and it was so difficult because there's so much fear. What happens if kids actually start to disclose? Do you have the wherewithal to deal with that inside of the schools? Do you have the counselors? And then the PR, right? That starts to center around that is really distressing for a school district. So you have to have these programs set up to deal with it. And wouldn't it make more sense for all of us to work on prevention rather than crisis mode, whether it's in the family or the schools? Now, in the family, there are lots of books. I recommend one. I worked with a woman. We got to be friendly and colleagues. Jill Starashevsky is her name. And she wrote a wonderful book called My Body Belongs to Me for little ones. You can talk to little kids about this. I've done it lots and lots of times. I've given entire presentations to school auditoriums, to 5 to 8-year-olds. Just make it so that it seems normal and natural and plays to their developmental level. And this book does. It's done in a rhyming format with really nice pictures. And what we used to do is we used to do the poems. It's a poem. And I used da 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 da. Now you say it. And I used to do 2 lines. Da 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 da. Oh, you say it now. Da 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 da. And then we do question answer. You know, what would you do if something happens like this? You know, simple. We don't go into details. But if somebody approaches you, oh, Susie, what do you think? She says something. Oh, come on up and get a prize. It's fun. You can make it fun and educational at the same time. We can reach the kids, and we need to reach the kids, and we need to reach those families, and in wherever there is a connection to children, and that includes the schools.
So we're hitting on prevention, protection, education, all of these things that you have stood for decades. When does the topic of forgiveness come into your conversation?
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, I have appreciated a couple of the authors bringing it into the conversation very, very much. I do want to say that it takes a level of awareness and healing to even think about wanting to have that conversation, but I'm curious about what your thoughts are.
I think it's very individual. I think it depends on the background that you're coming from, the amount of healing that you've done, the level of abuse. I mean, there are children who have been exposed to ritualistic, satanic group abuse. Forgiveness? I don't know. I mean, really. I imagine that it would take a lot to get there. I mean, half the time they don't, well, sometimes they do know these people. Sometimes these people are, their mother and father leading them into this. But then there are other people. But that's tough. I mean, there are people I know, and I will continue with the answer in a second, but there are people that I know who are in their 50s and were exposed to this type of ritualistic, satanic kind of abuse. The way they are getting through life is medication. I don't think that would have been. It so screws with your mind and your sense of self. So I think, just to continue, who you are, where you're coming from, the extent of the abuse, how long it went on, how much it damaged your own individual psyche, and whether or not it serves you to forgive.
I like that a lot.
Does it help you move on with your life to get that level of letting go? Because anger after all, that's a binder. That's really, that keeps you where you are, and it keeps you pretty stuck. So I would say it's a very individual issue. And we all, I think most of us can identify with some level of some kind of abuse. I'm not necessarily talking sexual at all, but some level of abuse. in our childhoods, whether that's from our family or from school, school kids or what have you. And it has its impact. I don't care who you are, it has its impact. And I think that finding that peace within yourself to let go is enormously freeing, and shows perhaps even a love of self, that allows you to move on.
Thank you for commenting on that. I know that's a big one. We could be here for a few hours on that one alone.
Yeah.
Dr. Pamela J Pine, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for saying yes when I said, hey, let's do this. And thank you so much for being here today to share this with everyone.
Absolutely. I can't thank you enough. And anybody watching this who doesn't know this lady, you should get to know her, because she is truly extraordinary. Truly, truly amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, you guys, I know that Pam has said a thing or two that might have sparked some curiosity. Maybe you need some support. This is so much more than a book. This is a community of people who care. Drop down to the show notes. I have her hooked up with all of her social links and websites, and you can explore and see what her and the organization is up to. Please take that exploration, and especially if you need some support, there are a lot of resources that you'll find in those sites. And of course, please remember to join us, because we're going to have a book launch party on March 10th from 10 a.m. Eastern. And I'm going to gather with all of our Stop the Silence authors. We're going to be doing some giveaways that day. You can find the Zoom information down below for that. And if you're listening to this interview anytime around that date, March 10th or beyond, just hop over to Amazon, because that means the book is ready and you can make your purchase. Lastly today, remember everyone, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Bye, Pam.
Bye.